That's all right. We're rolling now. Please tell me your full name and your date of birth and your maiden name too.
Okay. My full name is Judith Roberts. I was born in San Jose, California. My maiden name was Calendar. And my mother and father lived in San Jose, California. That's where I
And
was born.
in what year were you born?
1940.
Were you born in a hospital or were you born at home?
I was born in a hospital, and in those days, they kept mothers who had just birthed a baby more than a week. And by the time they let the poor mother out of bed, she was so weak she could hardly walk because they kept her in bed. I mean, they really treated childbirth as a serious illness. And my mother and father bought this little tiny house out on Empey Way. And later, interesting enough, who was that? One of the family members, a kid, he rented that house. And he rented that house for a couple $100 a month, which was a phenomenal amount of money at the time. And that was, you could open the front door and look right straight through the living room and the kitchen and go out the back door. And behind us was a huge, I don't know what you call it, where all these trees, with walnut trees. It was just a huge place. And there were big ditches that every once in a while they would flood to water the trees, were walnut trees. And I would go out there when it was dry and hide in those ditches.
How old were you when you did that?
I wasn't in school yet, didn't start school until we moved into the city in San Jose. My father built that house.
This is the small house that you were living in? In where was that again?
It was in the county of Santa Clara. You walked down to the corner forever and got on the bus, and that's how you went anywhere. Grocery store, wherever you went, you had to go on a bus.
And
My father worked in a factory.
how old was your father and how old was your mother when you were married, when you were born?
I have no idea.
Really?
I don't
Never really
know.
thought about it?
No, I don't know.
I guess we could do the math and figure it out, but we don't. Would you say that he was older or younger? Or just normal age?
Yeah, younger, I think.
On the younger side?
But all three of us kids were born to that house.
Okay.
My
Now-
brother, Jerry Callender, and my sister, Joanne.
Jerry and Joanne. And
My sister was named for a babysitter. We had a babysitter who lived across the street, and her name was Joanne, and that's whom my mother named my Joanne.
now, okay, you have your maternal, your mother, and your father. Let's talk about your mother's family,
Okay.
and then talk about your father's family. So your mother is named
Lavelle Marie Callender. Well, it was Smith. Her maiden name was Smith, and then she married a Callender.
and yeah. So she maiden name was Smith, and she married a Callender.
Right.
Tell us about her background. Did you hear much about when she was a child
I did.
and where she grew up and who her parents were and things
Right.
like that? So
Right, I did.
so
My
she was
father, my grandfather, was in the Navy.
okay. Now Navy. Okay, this is Lavelle's father.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lavelle's father,
And his name was Henry
Henry, and his last name
Smith.
Smith.
And when my mother, he married a woman from Ireland, and I would expect that she had mental, emotional problems.
Oh,
And at one point in time, she tried to kill herself. She wasn't successful. And I was told by an older relative that somebody sat by her bed as she was recovering and said, "Oh, how could you do that?" And they lived in a little house in Vallejo.
okay. And
My
this is Henry Smith and his estranged wife, or
his wife and I don't
okay,
think
the
I
Irish
know
girl.
her first name.
Okay, so they were in Vallejo.
They were in Vallejo. My grandfather designed. Well, first of all, my grandfather was born in the back of a covered wagon in Oklahoma before Oklahoma was a state.
That was Henry Smith.
Henry Smith,
Wow, Oklahoma, covered wagon.
covered wagon.
Where were they going?
They weren't going anywhere. They were living in the wagon.
Hmm.
And when he was old enough, 15 or 16 years old, he got a job driving cattle.
Do you remember what year he was born?
No.
Okay, but it was long time ago.
Oh my goodness, yes. And he would travel to Texas where they would gather up this great big huge herd of cattle, and he was one of the men that drove the cattle, and they would drive the cattle all the way to, sorry, I'm not better with the details here, but, near Chicago, where the train was.
Oh, okay. So it was a big cattle drive.
Oh, it was a
Where-
huge, hundreds of cattle,
Moving up to the railroad.
where they could sell them, yes. And they would
Okay.
sell the cows. The cows would go on the train off to be slaughtered, and he'd go back down to Texas and do it again. And that was the one interesting story with him, just always stuck in my mind. In this little town in Texas, one of the men that worked as a cattle driver raped a woman, took her in the barn and raped her, beat her up. And my grandfather was pretty mad over it, and the sheriff just kind of shrugged. And my grandfather went after that man and killed him. Killed him with a pitchfork.
Oh my goodness. Did your grandfather get in trouble for it?
Nope. The town celebrated him as a hero.
Wow.
And in that day and age, that was not at all unusual
Yeah.
that somebody would just take care of their own person that was a bad person. So
How old was your grandfather when he did
he
this?
wasn't even 20 yet.
Just a really young guy.
He was just a young guy.
And he murdered someone over...
Chased him down right on Main Street in front of everybody and killed him.
Killed him with a... Yeah, make sure and look this way. Killed him with a pitchfork. That is pretty outrageous.
Yeah, pretty...
And that he didn't get in trouble for it.
Yeah, not like it would be in this day and age.
No.
So anyway, and then they gathered up the cows and left, and that was the end of that.
And that was in Texas.
That was in Texas. Yes.
You don't remember where that occurred, do you?
No. I
Okay.
wish I'd asked my grandfather more questions.
I know. That's the important thing, to ask more.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, so then there he is in Texas. Mm-hmm. And now, how did he migrate? He migrated out to California?
Migrated to California and joined the Navy. Because, this is a man that he taught himself to write. He didn't read very well, and he didn't write very well. And I have a few of his old letters someplace. And he joined the Navy, because what else did somebody without any education do?
Yeah.
So he joined the Navy, and he got a girlfriend, and
What year was this? Was it did he join during war? Or
before World War I, right?
Before World War I?
Yes.
Okay, so Henry Smith joined Navy before World War I.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then what did he do?
Well, he taught himself how to build boilers. So in those days, the ships had boilers and coal.
Mm-hmm.
And at Mare Island Naval Yard, they were building a hospital. And when somebody found out he knew how to build boilers, they had him build the boiler system for Mare Island Hospital.
Wow.
And he built the boiler system.
Wow.
And he lived in the house. He married this woman, and he lived in the house in town. But he was good to the sailors, and I think at this point he must have been a little older. And there was this young sailor, and I love this story. This young sailor was not old enough to be in the Navy. He was 16 or 17. And my grandfather said, "And where are your parents?" And he said, "They're in Oklahoma." And he said, "So have you been in touch with him?" Because this young kid, ran off and joined and falsified his age. And so he said, "Well, we're going to call him. You come to my house on Sunday. We're going to go find a phone, and we're going to call him, because they don't know where you are, and that's not fair." And so on Sunday, this kid showed up, and they went downtown in Vallejo, California, and found a payphone. My grandfather paid for it, and they put him on the phone, and he called his parents. Well, his parents were thrilled. And then Grandpa said, "Let's invite them out here." So my grandfather got the money together and sent the money to the parents, and the parents got on a bus and traveled from Oklahoma, and they put him up in a bedroom. My grandmother wasn't very happy, but my grandfather put him in a bedroom, and they visited. And then the first sea encounter, the first part of the war that was military ships shooting each other, the kid was a gunner on the machine guns. and or some kind of gun. I'm not sure it was a machine gun, but on some kind of gun. And he stayed on that gun until he was dead.
Oh, no.
And he got an award, and they gave the award to my grandfather. So my grandfather had that award. He was very proud of it in a little frame. So anyway, that was my grandfather. Well, he married in succession about 3 or 4 times.
Wow. Just a minute. We need to stop because I need to change, need to pause for just a moment.
Okay.
Okay. And